Well, you know, it's election season in South Africa when politicians start talking nonsense. And the latest is the minerals minister and national chairperson of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe, who described former Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter as a misappointment. He said, you take a lawyer and you deploy him to a technical institution, and he won't know the difference between wood and forest. Now we have an engineer there, and we see a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, Gwede Mantashe is a fool, a clueless wonder who is actually describing himself when he talks about someone being out of his depth. Leaders do not need to be technical experts to succeed. If they did, Mantashe would be unemployed. Let's look at the example of IBM in 1993. Lou Gerstner had zero experience when IBM hired him to save the lumbering, floundering tech giant. No experience in the tech industry whatsoever. But a funny thing happened on the way to bankruptcy. Lou Gerstner, a brilliant leader, knew how to assemble capable people around him, how to inspire others, and how to make the right decisions. All this despite the doomsayers' claims that the company would be broken up under the former American Express and RJR Nabisco executive. But not only did IBM survive, it thrived. It flourished under Lou Gerstner because he was a brilliant leader. He didn't have to be a technical expert or an engineer in the IT field. He was a brilliant leader. Had Eskom not had massive ANC interference, corrupt board members, a purging of qualified technical staff because they lack sufficient hands, corrupt contracts with thieving BE companies, outright theft, decades of power generation plant neglect, the ANC obsequiousness at the altar of climate change for the sake of handouts from the US and the European Union for the ill-conceived unjust energy transition, de Ruyter could very well have succeeded at Eskom. But now, as the electric slide minister, Cogent burns through diesel fuel at record rates to hold off load shedding until after the election, we are subjected to the illogical blame game from a minister who pushes the prospects of the Tebe Investment Corporation, a 28% shareholder in Shell downstream operations in South Africa, to generate revenue for the ANC. The Minister of Minerals has precious little mining industry experience, plenty of union boss experience, but his mining experience is limited to duty as, wait for it, recreation officer at Western Deep Levels, and welfare officer at the Prieska Copper Mines. Wow, that is some very serious technical experience. Of course, then after that, he was nothing but a union boss. By contrast, Andre de Ruyter does indeed have a law degree, but he also has a Master of Business Administration from Nyenrode Business University in the Netherlands, an extended career in various parts of Sasol, South Africa's large chemical and energy conglomerate, along with assignments and experience, including building an 865-kilometer natural gas pipeline between Mozambique and South Africa. A 2.5-year stint leading a highly successful business turnaround and transformation of a multinational chemicals business in Germany. De Ruyter was also the chief executive officer at Nampak, the largest packaging company in Africa, with operations across sub-Saharan Africa, including in Angola, tough place to do business, Nigeria, and Ethiopia, also difficult places to do business. Now, mind you, none of the stuff I just said is here to defend Andre de Ruyter. His slavish devotion to green energy is nauseating, but rather to note the comical insults hurled at him by a very unqualified Mantashe. Were the shoes on the opposite feet, no doubt South Africa's corrupt legacy media would be writing endless op-ed bemoaning de Ruyter as a racist for attacking the credentials of Gwede Mantashe because he's black. Alas, we don't have the time to read any more Melanie Verwoerd op-eds or listen to Dan Corder rants. Mantashe made his insulting comments Friday on the campaign trail in Tembisa in Ekurhuleni, where he spoke at a community meeting in Sophia, an informal settlement. He assured residents of the ANC's vigorous efforts to end load shedding. Now, shame that this focus by the ANC wasn't 2 decades ago. Mantashe seems to take South Africans for rubes. Folks do remember that 2 decades ago, when competent people were forced out of Eskom, it was considered the best utility company in the world. So he can blame de Ruyter, Jan van Riebeck, and apartheid all day long. It does not change the fact that the ANC was handed a jewel and proceeded to neglect and loot the golden goose for 2 decades. De Ruyter is, of course, open to criticism for his slavish devotion to costly solar over reliable coal, but he's not the reason Eskom failed. He was dumb enough to not see the racist setup he blindly walked into, establishing himself not only as the ANC's willing scapegoat for over 2 decades of failure as it came to a climax, but also the target of assassins when he threatened their gangster cabal over its hold over Eskom. The ANC, not de Ruyter, is the culprit here. In explaining the magical load-shedding-free pre-election aberration, Mantashe told those gathered in Nicklin, Sputla, that's the electricity major, Kojisenso Ramakopa, is doing good work because it has been 50 days now and we don't have load shedding. He continued, those who don't like us say the lights are on because of the elections, but that isn't the case. We've worked towards this since July 2022, and it is now giving us results. You will have load shedding if you agree to do away with coal. Coal generates base load. Well, that's true. The only problem with this story is that while Mantashe has long been singing the praises of coal-burning power stations, the rest of his party is worshiping at the altar of climate change. And Mantashe has done nothing tangible to return to coal, nor has he launched any inquiries into the racket selling painted rocks to power stations. That's right. Gangsters selling not coal, but rocks painted black, and Eskom buying it. You can't burn rocks unless you're at the center of the earth or on the sun. In other words, Mantashe's faith in coal is not backed up by any actions, just his comments. Now, this, of course, is the modus operandi of the ANC. Words, not good deeds. For his part, Mantashe was also implicated in the Zondo Commission report of state capture. In the Mantashe case, the commission registered reasonable suspicion that Mantashe had received the free upgrades in the knowledge that they were intended as inducements in exchange for political influence. Let's also not forget that he defended state capture era in protecting Jacob Zuma in parliament as well. Now, asked whether the ANC regretted appointing de Ruyter, Mantashe said, but there was no backlash. Actually, opposition parties supported him. I was one of the people who said right at the beginning that this was a misappointment. Opposition parties may have endorsed the de Ruyter hire, but the decision was taken by the ANC. He went on to say, when you do a misappointment, you destroy the institution and the capability of the individual because you deploy an alpha in an area that requires a fixer. It doesn't mean that the manager is not skilled. You are just using the skills incorrectly. You damage the individual and you damage the institution. Really? A fixer? I seem to remember de Ruyter doing exactly that in Germany in a foreign language with a failing chemical company and turning it around and saving it in under 2 years. De Ruyter is a fixer. By his own words and logic, Gwede Mantashe should immediately resign from office as he is clearly unqualified to serve in cabinet with no experience, no proper experience in the mining industry or energy. Just a big mouth. And now scapegoating Andre de Ruyter while trying to hoodwink rube South Africans into believing that load shedding is gone. Ladies and gentlemen, load shedding will be back with a vengeance. If not immediately after the election, not long after that. Eskom cannot generate sufficient electricity to meet the needs of South Africa. It can't because of neglect, malfeasance, theft, corruption, and incompetence. And of course, racism. Let's not forget that. Well, there you have it. The ANC blames de Ruyter for its 2 decades of failure. And they forget that they tried to murder him. Well, somebody tried to murder him. Elections, always entertaining in the US and in South Africa. Liars come out in force. And here we have Gwede Mantashe running his mouth and full of crap. Thanks a lot, folks. Be sure to hit the like button. Become a subscriber if you're not. We appreciate your support here on the Indaba Africa channel. Cheers.